So Unity on the Avenue is a welcoming, unapologetically inclusive community. We welcome and honor everyone, no matter what their racial background, no matter what their sexual orientation, all those things. None of them make any difference whatsoever to us. We love you and look forward to having you with us physically in our own presence. So at this point in time, I invite you to join me in our statement of faith. There is only one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent. And our prayer chaplain for today is our very own beloved Pennyware.
In this moment, just assume a comfortable position as you continue in this holy space and as you become aware of your breath. As you focus on each inhalation and exhalation, just allow your body to relax. I invite you to allow the words of this prayer to be your prayer. Just breathe in this truth. I am continually in the flow of God's love, grace, and mercy. I am continually in the flow of God's love, grace, and mercy. Grace is pure, divine love in action that is always and forever available to me. God's love and goodness can never be withheld from me because it is one of God's greatest gifts to humanity. Just allow yourself to feel your breath. Know this truth. I am here to have experiences. Through these experiences, I learn to grow. I learn to become more loving, kind, and compassionate. I am here because of God's grace. So I live in grace every day and in every way. Through living in grace, I cooperate with others, and I am making the world a better place for all of us. Only love and God's grace are real for me. Grace is God's gift of love and mercy, given freely to me whether I deserve it or not. I cannot steal, borrow, buy, or earn it. I can only accept or refuse it because I am continually in the flow of God's love, grace, and mercy. I am immersed in God's powerful guiding presence. I am immersed in God's love and grace. And so it is. I am so grateful. Amen.
So this service, if you haven't been around before, you all get to talk. None of you are required to talk, and all of you are encouraged to talk. Now, we only sort of have one need. Because this is recorded and we do have people who watch at home, you need the microphone. So when you want to talk, when I start asking questions in 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, who knows when that will happen, you're all invited to talk, but please don't be afraid to speak into the microphone. If you're close to me, I'll give you this one, and if you're not, Ken will give you his, okay? So, we've been doing a series on Discover the Power, which is by Eric Butterworth. I didn't bring the book in here today, but It was written back in the 60s. If you don't know Eric Butterworth, he was the minister in New York City. He was a lot of places, but he's known for being the minister in New York City and filling Lincoln Center on Sunday mornings when he talked. So he was an important unity minister who wrote a lot of wonderful books. And this is the first book he wrote, and it's Discover the Power Within You. The truth is, it's important that we all know how powerful we are. And he uses biblical quotes to help teach that you are powerful, that we study in unity the religion of Jesus, not the religion about Jesus, which is a big distinction. So today we're going to talk about an interesting topic to a fair amount of people. Did Jesus teach reincarnation? Now, that's not a topic that you hear in a lot of churches. And yet it is chapter 17 in Discover the Power Within. And so to tell you a little bit first about the Fillmores. So Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were co-founders of Unity. And they founded it back in the 1890s. And to show you what a different group Unity is, in 1893 was the very first World Parliament of Religions. Now, many of you may not know what that is, but it's honestly all religious leaders from all the world religions getting together to hold a common vision, to learn from each other, to study that. It's one of the reasons that when you look in the What is Unity book, and if you read the description on the front page, where'd it go? Maybe it's not on the front page anymore. They reprinted this. What page is it on? Come on. Well, somewhere in here, so you don't have to watch me turn pages, is Unity is a positive, practical, progressive, and here's your key word, approach to Christianity based on the teachings of Jesus, the healing power of prayer that honors the truth in all religions. So put your mind back to the 1890s, horses and buggies, circuit riders, and Charles and Myrtle Fillmore traveled from Denver, Colorado to Chicago to be part of a parliament of world religions. That's why when we look at the statement, what is unity, it talks about world religions. Now, that is a distinct difference from most Christian churches, and we are an approach to Christian churches. So, Eric Butterworth poses the following questions. If this is life, but the preparation for another life to come, how do we account for the inbred desire that we all have to live? If you grew up in a Christian church and you heard heaven described, you might ask yourself why we wouldn't, now don't fall off your chairs, why we don't all want to die so we can be in heaven right now. So what do you think afterlife is? You know, yesterday many of us were at a longtime member of Unity on the Avenue's memorial service. Now, I don't think in any way Lawrence was afraid to die, but nor did he seek death. What happens to us after death? What do you think? And there is absolutely no wrong answer. If you're planning to go to a place with a guy on the throne and streets lined with gold, that's okay. But what do you think happens after death?
I think that we go to one of many heavenly planes and have a review of our life. What did we learn? What did we do? What do we need to learn that our life showed us? And then after being in the inner worlds for a period of time, we reincarnate. And that's what I think.
Thank you, Roseanne. Okay.
I didn't believe in any of the afterlife stuff until my mother got real sick, and she was in the hospital, and she had a near-death experience, and because she could relate that to me, and she was my mother, then I started believing in that stuff. And she told me that she went up there, wherever that is, and she said it was pretty peaceful, and then she came back down, and then she eventually passed away. So anyway, that created some interest for me in reading about near-death experiences. So I've read, I think, 3 or 4 different books on people that have had near-death experiences, and they're all very, very similar in terms of what they describe. And it sounds pretty neat up there, or wherever that is, up or down, or, you know, around and through. But all the experiences are, you go up through this little chute, and you meet these angels as you go up, who are maybe some of your relatives that have passed away, or whoever. And then once you get up there, time no longer exists, and everything is, you can, when you're up there or you're at that spot, you can hear everything that's going on down below. So there seems to be a very small veil between the living and, you know, the people that are in that other space. But it does sound pretty interesting, and most of the people say that when they get up there, they have an option of either staying there or going back. And I think the reason that a lot of people want to come back is because they still have something to do back here. They have some need to be fulfilled. And most of the people that have that near-death experience, when they come back, their lives have changed, and most of them become healers as opposed to whatever they did before. I think the one example that stood out for me was an anesthesiologist had a near-death experience, and prior to having that experience, he was not a very good person. He wasn't very good with his bedside manners with patients. He was really, the most important thing for him was just to get a lot of patients and make a lot of money and buy yachts and boats and houses, and he didn't spend a lot of time with his family. After he had that near-death experience, he stopped being an anesthesiologist and actually became a healer. And he paid attention to his family and his kids. He sold all of his material possessions, and his life turned around. And so that's my take on the whole thing. It makes it sound like if we do have to meet our time, that it's not a bad deal. But there's reasons to stay on the earth to do good things.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Now who? I think Carol looks like she wants to talk.
Well, I don't have all the answers. I kind of look at death as a reverse of being born, that you return to where you came from. And just as when you're born innocent and pure, and you go through life with all your human qualities that get you into trouble thinking-wise all the time, but as you pass on, you return back to that perfection within you. And in the people that you've touched and the places you've touched while you were here in this plane, you live on through them. And I mean, you think about anything in the world, it was made by somebody, everything in our lives, and you're sitting in a chair that somebody designed, and they're living on because they did something that we could use. So it doesn't matter what you were here for, your energy lives on in the people that you touched with the purity of your heart.
Okay, thank you, Carol. You know, Carol touched on, you know, why am I here? Why am I like I am? Why am I care about one thing and then some other thing? Do you ever wonder why you picked the parents that you picked? Some of you who had childhoods that were not so easy will find that if you finally decide that for you, you chose those parents for exactly the lessons that you would learn from being part of their family, it makes it easier sometimes. James Dillard Friedman, who is referred to as Unity's poet laureate, wrote a book, and he was also the vice president of education for Unity School of Christianity for many years, wrote a book called The Case for Reincarnation. So it's been part of Unity's things to consider, because we don't, you know, you aren't going to walk in the door and we're going to tell you reincarnation exists, you need to believe that. That's not what we're going to do. But we hold this because in this moment, most of us don't know. Now, Mark used an interesting phrase when he was sharing near-death experiences. Have any of you personally had a near-death experience?
I used to be in another New Thought religion, and they touted soul travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the soul travel exercises and went to the heavenly world and went to classes. And there was one class on self-esteem, and everybody sat down and they had a bud vase in front of them with a bud, and all of a sudden everybody's flower opened up. And I've talked to people in the inner planes and experienced some of my own past lives that relate to interests that I have in this life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I did have a strange experience when my father had passed.
Mm-hmm.
It was shortly after he had passed, and I was driving on 20th over I-25. And as I was coming towards entering the highway, there was a car that pulled right in front of me. And as I kind of shrunk down in the seat going, oh my gosh, I'm about to get into an accident. And something shifted my hand in order for me to veer away from the vehicle in front of me. I don't know what it is, and I feel like even with Diego told me once, he was about 4 years old, and he said, hey Mom, this is my 7th life, and you've been in every single one of them. And I was like, really? And it gave me goosebumps just to hear that my kiddo has been in my life for all those times. And I said, well, who were you? That was my question, who were you? He's like, I can't tell you. So I believe that within our lives we've been here on multiple occasions. Some of us, maybe it's a new life, but I believe that whatever our purpose is, if we don't learn it now, we'll be back to learn that lesson, or maybe there's another lesson for us to learn.
Thank you.
Throughout my life, I've had a period of, I guess you would call them premonitions. I was sleeping and I thought I was having a dream, and I dreamt that my grandmother had died. And all of a sudden I woke up and the phone was ringing, and my sister picked it up, and there was this voice screaming on the other end, and it was my aunt who lived with my grandmother telling us that my grandmother had died. And then another time I had a dream that I was saying goodbye to my father, and he was hooked up to all these machines, laying in, I guess, what was like intensive care. And I want to say maybe a few weeks later, I was at work and received a phone call saying that my father had had a massive stroke and was in the hospital, and that I needed to get there to say goodbye to him. And when I got there, he was exactly the way I had pictured him. And my son was a year old when my father passed away. My father had only seen him once. And one day, my son was in elementary school, and I kept saying, "Come on, Jacob, come on, we're going to be late for school. What are you doing?" And he came down the stairs and he said, "I was talking to Grampy." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, Grampy was upstairs. He was wearing this thing that looked like a uniform." He said, "And I was talking to him." And I thought to myself, how could you remember him? You were a year old when he passed away. I mean, you met him very briefly, and my dad always wore his uniform. Didn't matter whether he was working or not. He just thought, hey, I don't have to pay for these clothes. They'll wash them. That's what I'm wearing. So I do believe there is an afterlife. I do think that there is a connection between us internally, whether we can tap into that or not. But I have had some very unique experiences with premonitions and people coming back, like when I moved into my home in Montgomery, Illinois, this big giant fly came whizzing by my head, and I don't know whatever made me say it. I said, "Hey, Dad," and I was just like, wow, where did that come from? So I think there's a lot of truth to it.
Years ago, back in the 90s, you may have seen a movie called City of Angels, Nicolas Cage. And it was a movie that was impactful for me. And what was impactful is that in this movie, Nicolas Cage is an angel. And he chooses, because he falls in love with a human woman, to become human, to give up that humanity. And what he's impressed by is a shower, the feeling of rain on his skin. So as an angel, and we'll use that to represent that as somebody who is not in the body, why would we choose to leave, quote, eternal bliss for a human experience? While he experienced as an angel wonderful agape love, which is spiritual love, you don't experience intimate love. You can experience perfection, but not the joys of sunsets and sunrises and rain and snow and all the wonderful things of being human. So I'm going to briefly tell you my personal story around all this. Now, this is Doris. This is not the Unity minister speaking, so again, take it for what it's worth. So I experienced personally, working with a facilitator who's a friend of mine, past lives. I could go into detail about all those past lives. I was never, except in one, anything remotely important. I mean, in one I was about a 14-year-old gypsy who was in love. I ended up dying in childbirth. And like you said, Gayana, some of the people in my life have shown up in all of those past lives. So if you think you just get to skip dealing with whoever it is that's a pain in your neck, deal with them now, deal with them next time, because that's part of your lesson. So my friend and I, she's also a spiritual teacher. She happens to be a Unity licensed teacher. We decided to try an experiment. And please, I am not recommending this experiment, but I'm going to tell you what we did. We wanted to go between lives and see if we could see God. Okay? So she was I'm going to call her the conductor all the time. She was my conductor because we worked really well together that way. And she would talk to me and ask me questions, and I would answer her. And the amazing part of the experience is that she could see what I was seeing. So even though it was my experience and she wasn't there, she could tap psychically into what I was seeing. So I went in between lives, and it felt like blackness, but not dark. And there were, if you've ever lived in the Midwest and seen fireflies, or you know what that's like, there were flashes of light in the darkness that wasn't darkness. We could communicate with anyone, but you weren't using any words. I could see from there people I loved on earth, exactly what you're talking about. And I asked the question in this environment, where's God? The answer that I got was, we are collectively God. So each of those flashes of light, each of you sitting in these chairs, each of you at home, are collectively, we're that divine energy. And we've talked about spiral dynamics in here for a while, and if you think about the consciousness of the earth evolving and changing and growing, we are that consciousness. So, friends, we created this world. And the way this world will evolve into peace, into a world that you want to live in, is because we collectively evolve our own consciousness. Now, I did not have an easy childhood, and my mother's story about my birth was she had had 2 children prior to me, but I was the first child she had in a hospital with anesthetic, and they gave her too much anesthetic, and she didn't see me for about 24 hours after I was born because I was knocked out. I was alive, but I was not a normal crying baby at that moment. So when Elizabeth was bringing me back into this environment, I wouldn't come. My body got cold. She was terrified that I would stay there or die in this body. She actually warmed blankets in the oven to get me warm. It took a long time for her to get me to wake up. She never did what we did ever again because it scared her to death. So that was my experience. I am certainly not recommending it to anybody else. And do I know that's real? Well, interiorly, Doris knows it's real, but she's not trying to tell any of you it's real. That was what was real for me. So simply allowing space. Don't believe it because I said it. Please don't do that. But allowing the space for not knowing, and allowing the space for the fact that we choose our path. You chose your parents. I don't care if they were abusive assholes. You chose them. The question becomes, why? Why did you choose them? What did you learn from them? What does your soul, not your human personality, not your ego, what did you want to learn? Why would you choose those parents? Why would you choose that horrible existence? It's a question that only you can answer, and you can't answer it sitting in this circle. You can only answer it by going within and being in touch with your parents, your former husband, former wife, former whoever, I don't care. Why? What did I want? What did my soul want to learn? So if we never have experiences we don't want, we'll never make the changes we came into this life to make. If we see all of our experiences, the good ones, the horrendous ones, the impossibly awful ones, if we see them as an opportunity to learn, then we're learning the lessons our soul, not our human person, but our soul wants to learn. How can you translate your experiences into your own evolutionary journey? How do you get clarity beyond your emotions of hurt, rage, anger, all those things? And you're perfectly legitimate in feeling those feelings, but if you get stuck in feeling them, you don't have an opportunity to learn from them. Once you see that everything that's happening in our experience is for our soul's growth, you will better understand how to navigate these experiences. When we can navigate those experiences, we're contributing to our own soul's growth and to our opportunity to expand. A very unusual unity lesson for today. Not Doris's normal lesson. You know, we were busy quoting the Beatitudes a couple of weeks ago. But an interesting opportunity, if you choose to accept it, for your own soul's evolution. Take what works for you. Leave the rest of it. It doesn't matter whether you believe a word I said. That's not important. What's important is our own journey. And so I invite you to take a breath with me. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Take a deep breath and let it out. It's a lot. Sometimes, God, this life is a lot. And yet we hold this life, our experiences, as sacred. God, we're here because we choose to learn. What we learn and how we learn it happens at our own pace. There is no timetable. There is no thing that we need to do. We simply show up and breathe. We live each day as best we can. And we include in that all of the noises of childhood, which are sacred to us. They are perfect. The giggles, the joy are a part of us. They help take us back to our own childhoods. They are part of our own evolutionary journey. So in this moment, we reach back into our past to include anyone that comes to your mind's eye that would like to be included. We know that their presence is near each and every one of you because they love you. They agreed with you to share a life, that you might be each other's teachers. Send them love. Send them appreciation. Send them the opportunity to communicate with you in whatever way works for them and you. It's simply a possibility, an intention. Allowing any unusual energy that you feel to be a part of this experience. Welcome it. Taking a deep breath, we share that energy back into the universe, sending it back to those we love, those we have shared many lives with. Thanking them for their contribution to each of our own evolutionary experiences. We use our collective consciousness to send peace and love into the world. And so it is, and so we let it be. So this is the time when I remind you that your love offerings support our community. Consistent givers sometimes have these little papers. If you see someone put that in, you know that they are using it to bless it in this moment, but they give. We have a square in the back that allows us to take your credit card very easily. It will instantaneously shoot you your email receipt. So we also accept strange things like cash and checks, should you happen to still carry those. I invite you to use whatever method of giving you have or just your own energy and join us in our offertory affirmation. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. All right, I invite you to bless our kids. You got to the right place at the right time. Drum up lots of energy, sending them lots of energy, lots of love, lots of light. You are loved, special, and important. We see you and bless the divine being that you are. Yay! We miss you when you're not here. All right, join me in the prayer for protection, please. The light of God surrounds us. I am that light. The love of God enfolds us. I am that love. The power of God protects us. I am that power. The presence of God watches over us. I am that presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yay! Don't leave without coming down to have lunch with us. Thanks for being here.